that's affecting us. During this dialogue, we're going to be able to have great conversations. Well, when I say great conversations, it's going to be virtual conversations, right? So I'm going to need for you to think about things in a different manner. Um, and you're probably wondering, who is this person that's talking to me? Well, my name is Captain Kevin Junor. I am your moderator for this afternoon. It's afternoon for you, but it's even for me because I am calling from here in Jordan, where I am deployed in Operation Impact, having a great time doing what we do within the Canadian Armed Forces. On behalf of the 32 Canadian Forces Health Services team, I really want to thank you for taking your time out now to join in this dialogue today where we can talk about healthcare, health and wellness issues impacting the BIPOC community. I've been in the CAF for over 3 decades. Yes, I'm a little bit up there in age. I got a few gray hairs. And over that time, I've been able to champion diversity and inclusion within the CAF. Right now, there are a number of new policies that governs the behavior of CAF members, CAF and D&D members. But I must humbly submit to you that we still need to go further to hold our people accountable. When it comes to accountability, we're still marking time, and we've been marking time for a long time. The current leadership team at 32 Health Services has really inspired me to think beyond the traditional racial barriers, to think now more so about the health-related barriers. And these barriers continue to be detrimental to CAF and D&D members in the BIPOC communities and to their families. So today's panel is going to discuss and explore the BIPOC patient's health and wellness. This is going to include how the pandemic, and you all know about COVID, how it's been impacting us, and the rise of social justice and how those are driving healthcare transformation. Yes, there are changes, and with those changes, we hope that all of this will inform and reshape the realities of health services for the future and truly, I say truly, become diverse, inclusive, and be accessible. 32 Health Services is committed, and I want to emphasize committed to providing healthcare that is diverse and inclusive. Your participation today is really important. This is an opportunity for us to have an open dialogue between you, healthcare providers, and the chain of command. Yes, the chain of command. The information obtained today will really influence how the healthcare service will provide service to you and also the resources that potentially could be available in the future. So speak your mind. And with everything that we do, there's got to be a few ground rules, all right? So ground rules that's going to guide us tonight is be respectful at all times, all right? You're probably muted right now, and I ask that you will remain on mute, and any questions that you have, please go to the chat room, send them up the chain of command. Yes, the chain of command. There's a team that's out there that will be able to get all your questions, and with the questions, we'll be able to bring them to me, and I will make sure that we will address as many questions as possible. Keep in mind, we've got 90 minutes. That's all we have, 90 minutes. And we won't be able to answer all your questions in 90 minutes, but after the event, we'll try our best to respond to you and get back to you. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our distinguished panel. I had the opportunity to meet some of these individuals, and I'm telling you, I can't do them justice. So I'm going to ask them to take a moment to introduce themselves as I call their names. we have Dr. Ahmad. Are you there, Doctor?
Hey, yes, I am. Hi,
Oh,
Captain
yes,
Bernard.
you are.
Yeah.
Please take a moment and just tell us who you are.
Yes, I'm Dr. Sanya Ahmed. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and the director of the Toronto Psychology Clinic, a clinic that focuses in particular on BIPOC and marginalized groups. It's a clinic I started because I myself am BIPOC. I'm a woman of color, South Asian Canadian. I've grown up in Toronto and also lived in Saudi Arabia and the UK. And all of these experiences have contributed to my awareness of racism discrimination that I myself have experienced and had to learn to find my voice in these experiences. And I'm looking forward to sharing what I've learned with yourself. So please do ask questions. I'm here to listen and to learn with you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Warrant Officer Linklater, he sent his regrets. As you know, when you're in the Canadian Armed Forces, you can be tasked at any time. So he received that task, but he's committed to popping in with us if we do this again. And that's just a hint, all right? Um, Next, I'm going to ask Dr. Montero to introduce herself. Doctor?
Hi, I'm Dr. Althea Montero. I'm a psychologist at 32 Health Services at the Denison Armory. And the reason we're doing this is because a number of very courageous people who came to see me started to actually share their experiences with racism with me. And I was fortunate enough to be able to share this with the leadership at 32 Health Services and have them hear it and decide to do something about it. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. And you know, we might have to have a conversation one-on-one after, so you can give me some pointers, all right?
Sure.
Thank you very much. On the line, I think we have Lieutenant Navy Tully. Are you there, sir? No, you're not there yet? All right, well, I'm sure that he'll be able to join us later on. And our next panelist is Dr. McKenzie, and he's a very, very busy person. And I just heard that he will be joining us later on as we go through the conversation. So for all of us that's online right now, we're just going to kick it off, and I'm going to ask our two doctors to, you know, get ready for it because it's coming fast and furious. All right. So as I listen to both of you, I can see that you're definitely in tune with what's going on out there. There are a number of challenges that we're facing, and we already have some questions that were sent to us. And the preamble to the first question is Dr. Natu, a second generation Canadian of East Indian descent, and working resident physician in Canada, has stated that, and I'm going to quote, no matter your career or status, being Black, Indigenous, or a person of color, BIPOC, means you will experience racism, right? That's the quote there. Systemic racism is prevalent in all institutions, including healthcare. Issues of racism in healthcare are twofold, and both of you can definitely relate to this. And the difficulty of being a BIPOC physician and how physicians treat BIPOC patients, right? So that's my preamble there. So my first question, what are the difficulties facing BIPOC patients when engaging with the health system? What are the difficulties faced by BIPOC patients when engaging with healthcare system? Who wants to take a stab at that one?
I think I'll let Dr. Emmett go first.
Okay. Well, I think one major reason is that we don't have enough people who are trained to understand the unique challenges of the BIPOC community. We also don't have enough BIPOC individuals themselves in the mental health system. We are quite a minority. Also, people go for treatment, for mental health treatment with institutions with whom they have trust, and there's not enough trust of the mental health system. It is seen as a part of a broader problem of systemic racist institutions. Psychology is guilty of that as well too. Also, a lot of people who are BIPOC, it's a very heterogeneous group. I find that a lot of them come from families that don't have a long-standing history of living in Canada and come from places that there weren't a lot of mental health professionals or services, and they're not familiar with the mental health system. Then if you're not familiar with mental health systems, you don't go and seek out that help. There's also stigma about that as well. I mean, I'll say that in my family, a lot of people in my extended family back in India don't never been to a psychologist and say they want to come talk to me. And I say, no, you can't talk to me. You need to talk to someone outside the family. So I think those are some of the reasons. And hopefully, I think some other people could speak more to this.
Okay, you know that's really interesting in that, as you stated, a lot of BIPOC community they don't go to see somebody who um, their friends might say, "What are you doing?" Is that correct?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of people will say, I'll never tell my family or friends that I've come to see a mental health professional. There's just so much stigma around that as well. And people don't tell each other when they do go for such help. So we all just assume, I think, that people aren't seeking out mental health services within the BIPOC community. There is a lot of that fear and the stigma. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
A follow-on to that is, and you know, Dr. Montero, you know, I'm going to throw this one at you, right?
Yes.
What are some of the difficulties faced by BIPOC caregivers?
I think it's honestly, you don't feel like you quite belong in your own profession most of the time. Your lens on things sometimes is very different. Sometimes the things your patients choose to share with you are different that they have chosen to share with other care providers. And it's that shared experience, honestly. And you've got your own struggles with racism within the system, with barriers in the system. And it starts, honestly, and Dr. Emmett can testify to this, in graduate school, in medical school. It doesn't begin suddenly. It's part of how we work. And you learn to work around it, through it. You do whatever you can, and you become partially a voice for your patients in the system. It's hard sometimes listening to the stories, and I will tell you openly, I have sat with patients who've shared all kinds of experiences and cried because they echo my own. And it's painful. It's painful, and it's worth doing.
Do you know you've said something that that really made me think. Now, I'm an infantry officer, and officers, NCOs in the military, we're not really. It's not great for us to show emotion. So you're telling me that somebody would come into your office and cry?
Yes, and he was a big, strong man too. So part of what we do is people have been bottling up emotions, pathologizing their emotional reaction, their emotional response, their anger, their fear, their hurt at how people have been treating them for so long. And when they sit down with me, and you know, I consider myself very fortunate that they are able to trust me with this. They sit down with me and we open that can of worms. We open all those emotions that have been bottled up for so long. They've turned into a toxic space inside them that is impacting their life and honestly how they feel about the calf.
Wow. You know, you're unpacking me as we're talking here, and I'm loving this. You know, it's not a surprise that people are feeling impacted by the society today, right? And one of the questions that that just came up to us is I've been stressed since George Floyd's death, right? I've reached out to mental health. My psychologist told me that it's normal that I'm feeling so stressed and scared as a woman who is Black with a husband and son who are also Black. I feel like I'm going crazy. Why am I stressed about something that did not happen to me or even in Canada? Shouldn't shouldn't I be used to racism by now? It's been happening my entire life. So I need your help. Who's going to help me on this?
Hi, yeah, I'll jump right in. Sorry, I wasn't sure who goes next with
Yeah.
virtual platforms. It's hard to know when to jump in. And well, so in response to that question, racism is a trauma, and trauma doesn't have to happen directly to you. It can happen to someone who looks like you, who's close to you. And we don't get used to trauma. We don't get used to racism. We may start to adapt in unhealthy ways, such as by denial, by colluding with the sort of aggressor and saying it doesn't happen. It was just all in my head. And that can lead to more stress. See, stress in response to racism is normative. And racism is ongoing in the media. We're hearing about it. It's ongoing to your friends and family. We're all talking about it. It exists all the time. And when we engage in, say, denial, I think is that what happens is that really leads to a disconnect with what's happening on the inside, what you're feeling, and that leads to more stress. I want to share an example. I actually did hear about that question before the talk, and it primed me to remember something that I didn't share before. 2001, right after 9/11, a person of Indian descent was pushed in front of the subway and died. And when the person who pushed him said, I was asked, why'd you do it? It's because he's Muslim, he's a terrorist. When I heard that story, it scared me. And I'm scared to this day. I will still stand 2, 3 steps away from the edge of the platform. It may sound weird to anyone, that happened once, but I am still scared because I know the dialogue. I know it's how upset people get, and I know about all the racially motivated hate crimes, and that gets me scared. So for those of you who feel like, why am I still scared? Even if nothing directly happened to me, just know that that's an experience that we all, a lot of us BIPOC people have.
So you're saying that the experience that we have as members of the BIPOC community, it literally changed your lives.
Yes, it does. And it's still something that is at the back of my mind, especially if something's happening in the media. I hear about someone who looks like me. My family members get, I mean, we are a person of color. We get attacked, insults and race. Even when I cross the border from Canada to the US, my last name is Ahmed. I'm constantly being questioned much longer than my white colleagues, and they see it too. It's always there. And hence, when I walk out the door, there are days and that I kind of wonder, what if it's today? What if something happens? So it's very normal to feel scared and to feel stressed. And what's most important, though, is to start talking about it. See, that question got me to talk about my experience and share my experience. And if we all start sharing our experiences, the more we talk about it, the more we could do something about it, the more it increases awareness amongst other people who didn't know, who don't have that direct experience themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's it's interesting that as we're speaking, you're talking about the experiences that we have and how it's really impacted how we think and how we behave. One of the questions that I have here is it says I've experienced flat out racism. My chain of command wants me to talk it through. I am really angry and uncomfortable. What should I do or say or do so they can see how much this request is hurting me? Right? You're saying that we should talk about it, but here's a chain of command. They're telling you to talk. Does this go back to what you're talking about with trust?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky question for sure, because on the one hand, if we don't share what's being done to us and what we feel, if we don't share what's going on, we'll feel disempowered and it'll affect us psychologically, cause more distress. On the other hand, there are situations, if you do speak up, it could cause harm in the sense of your position in the military, and your relationships with other people, because there are some people who will not understand you, who may be defensive, not able to be empathic and put themselves in your shoes. So it's important to be strategic about it. And if not taking a big step by speaking up, is take small steps, whether it be sharing what's going on with someone within the military community, finding an ally with whom you can share and your experience and be validated, understood, and get some power back. Because each time you take one step, you are getting your own agency, and you are taking some steps forward. But again, it's a tricky situation for sure, in that there's some situations where you may not feel safe to speak up. I've also been in that situation, and I've chosen not to speak up as well when I didn't feel like it would be received and understood, because that would just cause me more emotional grief myself.
Okay. Dr. Montero, did you want to add anything to that?
I did actually. I mean, part of this is about trust, Kevin. It really is. It comes down to, do I trust my chain to understand my position? And some of the patients I've spoken to do not. They have difficulty sometimes finding allies, because often they're told, just shut up, put up, there's nothing you can do about it. And they feel silenced by even their allies sometimes. So it's really hard to find that audience. Sometimes it's within your own family. Sometimes it's your health professional. Sometimes it's friends who can hear you. And you're not always going to be validated, and you're not always going to get support, but sometimes you are. I think what people need to learn to do is trust their own wisdom. We do know who we can trust. We do know who we can approach, and you can test the waters. You don't have to jump in feet first. You can dip in a toe and see how it goes, and take it from there. And there are degrees of things we can say, and we can say no to some things in a very, I know it's hard to say no to the chain, but we can say no in a very political, very, apt manner, and still not talk about racism and say we're exploring it elsewhere. I think the balance here is, how do we have a voice in the system, make a change in the system, and keep ourselves safe?
Okay, well said. And I know that within the ranks, diplomacy is not necessarily a thing that we learn too often. But we can probably talk about having a session on diplomacy as we move on. But seeing that you responded to that, there's another question that came, and I think this is one that's directed for you. How is health services dealing with trauma as a result of racism and discrimination?
So I actually do assessments in response to people who reveal this stuff to me, and determine if they actually meet criteria. Now, I will say their distress is normative, as Dr. Ahmed pointed out earlier, in response to racism. However, think of this in the following way. If you worked in a place where there was poisonous gas, and you repeatedly had an ill reaction to the poisonous gas, but you couldn't leave that place, you would develop significant issues over time that may take time to repair and may take significant intervention to repair. Psychological trauma is similar. When you have prolonged exposure to racism in your occupational context, we do diagnose it, and I do treat it.
Okay. So if there's an individual out there, that tough individual from whatever trade, who really need to talk to a professional like yourselves, what is that word? What is that statement? What's that phrase that you would throw out there to say, come and see me?
I think it's, do you feel like this is so big, it's affecting your function so much, it's distressing you so much that it's time to actually start to share a bit of it with somebody. And look, I may not be the answer. Dr. Emma may not be the answer. While we are a small minority, there are clinicians in the Greater Toronto area that are from the BIPOC community that may be the right person for you. And then we can figure out how to find that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I just want to add to it as well. Indeed, there's a minority of BIPOC mental health professionals. However, there are a lot of mental health professionals who themselves are white who are very actively interested in working on issues to do with stress in response to racism. And often what happens in people call our clinic, or many actually clinics in Ontario, it's very standard that you can say, can I have a brief conversation with the therapist? I just want to see if we're a good fit. And that's an opportunity I find that a lot of people who say, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm a person of color, or these are some about my background. I want someone who's familiar with this. And often the associate, like I have some associates in my practice, and they say, I'm not familiar, but I can find someone else who is for you. So definitely when you reach out, you can have the opportunity to have a discussion and help get some help with some navigation around who would be the best fit for you.
Okay. And that's so powerful, because when you go for a job, there are multiple interviews, and the second interview and third, it's more about how you fit, right? So powerful statement. I want to throw in another question, and this one I find also very interesting. Studies show that racialized and Indigenous Canadians get sick more and face barriers when they seek healthcare. Why are certain group of people getting different care?
Anya, do you want to address that first?
I think that this is a good question. Maybe hopefully Dr. Kwame, if he comes in, he does sort of more population level work, and I'm not sure if I can fully speak to all of that. So maybe Dr. Montero, if you have
Okay.
more. Yeah.
So basically, the way healthcare works is we look at expressions of distress, and often culture shapes how we express distress. There's lots of literature to actually show that people have different sensitivities and levels of pain depending on for example, the degree of melatonin they need in their, not melatonin, sorry, vitamin D they have in their system at the time. For example, this is from long ago, but I did research, and people who have darker skin actually experience more pain in winter months when there's less sun. So there are lots of differences. And how healthcare providers are trained is to basically see everybody as fitting into a category. And when you don't fit in the category, they don't know what to do with you. It is a struggle. It is a struggle for them. They want to help, they don't know how. And so there is a tendency for a lot of BIPOC patients to either be underdiagnosed or overdiagnosed. They'll throw the book at you. And for example, and I will give examples of this, some of my Black male patients are somewhat paranoid, rightly so, given their experiences. They may be misdiagnosed, and there's research out of the States on this, with paranoid schizophrenia. They don't have schizophrenia. They are healthily paranoid. However, again, there's misdiagnosis there. On the other hand, somebody may have severe depression and may not say, I'm really, really sad. They may say, I actually don't talk to my family and friends anymore. And if you come from my culture, if you stop talking to people in your family and friends circle, you are pretty sick. So it's that lens. It's having that lens and having that knowledge to be able to see things for what they are. In the BIPOC community, which is maybe this is being expressed differently. Maybe there is something going on, or maybe there's nothing going on, and we shouldn't be looking at a diagnosis, but rather resources to support this person. And I'll add on to that, just when it comes to physical health, because I've worked in the chronic pain world, people will come in and they'll be very like crying, yelling, expressing pain in an extreme way. Their pain is genuine. It's not seen as such. And I've often coached people on how to express pain in a culturally appropriate manner, so in the Canadian context, so they can get access to appropriate care, because they're dismissed as being hysterical or lying. So I will say that, there are a lot of misconceptions about the BIPOC community that our healthcare providers are just not trained in and are not able to therefore see the distress for what it is.
Yeah. And I just want to add to what Dr. Montero was saying is healthcare providers, whether physical health or even mental health, but I'm more familiar with mental health, they are working off of models and theories and research that's been done. And the research that's been done is predominantly of white middle class individuals because people of color are highly underrepresented in those research for multiple reasons. The same reason we talked about, like, what are the barriers for them getting help? There are barriers for them participating in research. Partly it is not enough focus and interest in trying to engage more BIPOC and participating in research, but also the BIPOC community not trusting the sort of research aspect and not trusting the researchers as well and participating in those studies. A lot of healthcare providers are not aware that the research that and the models of sort of care and assessment that they're working off of is biased. It is not representative of all the entire population that generally we're actually working with.
So if I can take from what you both said is, as the BIPOC community, when there research that's going on, it might be a good idea to get involved. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. And Dr. Montero, I kind of like that piece that you were saying that, people of color during the winter, things are a little bit harder, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And there's
You know what?
research to back you up, Kevin.
Hey, I like that because my wife was telling me that I phoned home yesterday and she was telling me that, hey, it's getting cold and I'm not feeling as comfortable. So it could be because I'm away, but we'll we'll have to see what goes on with that. There's a question that it's really speaking to me because I've heard this so many times. And it says, I've been told I need anger management by my chain of command, right? I'm a tall man who's black. I talk like the rest of the chain in the same tone. My family, friends, and subordinates report I'm a gentle, soft-spoken person. Why do I need anger management?
I'll answer that. Based on what you shared, I suspect that the person who's giving you that feedback, rather than them owning their sensitivity and discomfort with talking with someone who has a different style than themselves, they're telling you that you're the one with the problem, that you need to do something about it. When really what this person who's given you that feedback needs to do is be more aware of their own sort of unconscious or bias there to assume that a certain way of speaking is more angry versus not, and to actually to own that and to talk with you about it, to discuss with you how the communication is going between you two so that you can improve your working relationship. And I think it's quite unfortunate that that feedback doesn't seem fitting at all based on what you shared.
Interesting. Dr. Montero, what do you say?
So I personally, because I've heard this before, often it's people have biases and stereotypes that they come into conversations with. And my experience thus far in the CAF is if you're subordinate and you question the chain, sometimes those biases and stereotypes come into play, but the best reaction or the best way they can see to control you and to control your response to them is to tell you need things like mental health or anger management. And it's very, very hurtful because I feel like they're implying that you're the one that's out of control. And they're not implying this because of your behavior. They're implying this because of their bias.
Now, I'm going to add this to negotiation 101, right? You bring all your facts to the table, but you start losing the battle. The next thing you do is you strike at the person's emotions. You strike at their character. Is this something that's kind of in line with that?
Absolutely. I mean, what a way to undermine somebody, right? Make it about them, not about the situation, not about the issue, but really, and not to have an open and honest dialogue, but really make it about them personally.
Hmm. This kind of piggyback on the next question that I see. It says, no one believed me when I talk about racism. They say it is my attitude. I do have an attitude. How else can I protect myself from racism?
You know, that question when I've got to say, as soon as I heard it, I noticed myself feeling a bit emotional, because indeed, when people deny the racism exists, uh, you get more angry because of denial of your experience, and that just leads to people kind of trying to be a bit more pushing their point forward, and rightly so. And you can't protect yourself from racism. Racism is not something that you have done unto yourself. It's something that others are doing to you. And unfortunately, it's something that doesn't just happen between you and another individual. It's a systemic issue. It's happening all around us. If it was just one person in the ideal world who said something racist, but everyone else around us had been more supported, and there's no systemic racism, it would be very different. But it's one of many instances in many different ways that we are experiencing racism. And we really, unfortunately, cannot protect ourselves from any direct racist attacks because that can happen without our control.
Okay. Dr. Montero?
I would agree with Dr. Emmett's statements. I would say that honestly, sometimes we internalize it and we go on the defensive so we don't get hurt. It's a way to protect ourselves. And we truly see it that way. It unfortunately can also make us targets. And I always look for that middle ground, that balance between, yes, you protect yourself, but there's no need to be angry right from the start. Give them a chance, dip that toe in the water, but don't give anything away. There is that balance, there is that middle ground, and finding that is tricky, but it exists.
Okay. So within the military context, we're talking about power, and the chain of command has a lot of power. So how do we really work with that? Because there's inherent power that's given to the chain of command. As an officer in the Canadian Armed Forces, I can go to anyone in my command and say, "Thou shalt," and it should be done, right? As long as it's a legal order. So if I already have that power, right, and I come to somebody in the BIPOC community, and they already know that I have racist belief or tendencies, help me here. That's quite a multiplier factor, isn't there?
Yes, it is. Sonia, do you want to add on?
If you don't mind, I just want to know the question again. It was quite a lot in there. You say it's there's power issues, whatnot. But maybe if you could just say the question again.
Yeah, I guess in essence, I'm saying as a member within the Canadian Armed Forces, I am given power to command individuals to do things, right? So the power is already there. But if you also know that I have racist beliefs and my behavior is at times racist, that means that my power is even more amplified, isn't it?
Well, absolutely, yes. I guess I was pausing because I was wondering if we're talking from the perspective of what the individual does versus the person in a position of power. Because indeed, when you're in a position of power, having power in itself is not something it's evil per se, but it's using that power responsibly. And the concern is that if you have if you're unaware of your own biases and racial views, that you're likely to work and behave and speak from that place. And indeed, it is amplified. A person who is of less power, lower in the hierarchy than you would be quite impacted and quite afraid of you. So it's important to be responsible and to use that power responsibly to first make sure we are, person of power is trying to work on their racist views and change them. Important to get each other in check as well, to speak to each other, to encourage oneself to use that power responsibly. I hope I'm answering the question well, but indeed, I want to highlight that a person in a position of power has will have much more of a damaging effect if they hold racist views. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, why I threw that in as a follow-on, and within my career, I've had individuals who I know definitely to be racist, and when they give me commands, it's not. I wouldn't take it the way that the average person would,
Thank
but
you.
I look at this in a negative manner, right? And it's like, why are you talking to me? Is it Are you talking to me from the authority that's given to you by the government of Canada, or is this your racist tendency that's kind of pushing me? You see where I'm coming from with that?
I
Yes.
think so. Sorry, Jill.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump in because I think, I mean, what people overlook in the CAF is, yes, there is a hierarchy, and there is, if you're a higher rank, you can order people to do anything legal. I get that. And I understand, and please help me if I'm wrong here, Kevin, but that with that power comes responsibility. With that power, there are checks and balances. It is not simply, I have a God-given right to do whatever the heck I want with the people under me. It is much more, if I'm going to act on my racist tendencies, and people do, people ask people from the BIPOC community to take on some of the toughest tasks, the dirtiest tasks in training, for example. It does happen. I think honestly, I don't know what other checks and balances can be added to ensure this kind of racist stuff isn't constantly targeting, like isn't constantly misusing the power that's given to the hierarchy, because there is supposed to be a care for the troops under you. Is there not?
um, a part of the principle of leadership is know your followers and promote their welfare,
Yes.
right? And we can expand welfare beyond the traditional, food, clothing, shelter, to also impacting your mental health state too, right? Couldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. I'm loving this. I don't know. I, here I'm going to be a bit of a health professional for a moment and just checking to see how you're both doing. You all right?
I'm fine, doing well.
Fine too.
I really like it. I'm learning a lot as well. I mean, as you know, I've never worked in the military. So as I listen to the questions and listen to, of course, Dr. Matera and Captain Junar, you're both in the military. I'm starting to appreciate the military culture and how the structure and the culture, and how there's some much more unique challenges when it comes to racism. The power is a huge piece in that part of it. When we talk about racism, we often forget that we're talking about issues to do with power, and power amplifies harm. And they can, at the same time, I really believe it can. There are some people in a position of power who truly want to do well and can actually try to change things significantly if they're more willing to speak up and listen to other people's experiences, particularly the BIPOC community.
Okay, that's good. So we're all learning together, right? Um, as we move on, the the piece that keeps coming back all the time is people need to feel a part of the organization. They need to feel that the organization is going to take care of them. Um, and I'm not sure if you can answer this one. And this one's got to come to you, Dr. Matero. Um,
Yes, I can.
what,
I think
what is
um,
what is the CAF doing to educate and diversify its CF health services staff to better enhance its services to the BIPOC community?
and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but I know Major McLeod is looking at training and has already started training the 32 Health Service Division, just to be aware of their own bias, to be more culturally sensitive, and certainly is exploring how to ensure that we are serving the BIPOC community the best way we can, hence today's session. I think overall, though, the CAF as an organization, people join, because most of my patients are like this, as idealists. They really truly believe, in the brotherhood, in the collective, in this idea that we're all in this together, we're one big family. And honestly, when many of my patients have experienced racism, it's that betrayal from family. It's the betrayal of brotherhood. And it's more painful than Joe Blow on the street saying something awful to you. That stings. This is like a knife to the heart.
I think I'm going to come out with an experience. I was in a situation where I was outside of Canada, and my team, members of the CAF, they were concerned that I wasn't spending as much time with them, but I was with individuals from that country. And the question that came back to me is, are you Canadian or are you one of them? So I had to now make some really big changes in how I did things. And I want to get your feedback on this. In this case, what I did was I play drums sometimes. So I literally went out and I bought a drum. And whenever the pressure came on me from the team, I would go to my room and play my drum. Right? Now, a little bit of feedback on my solution, but what would you say to other individuals who would be in a similar manner? You're not at home anymore, right? You're now in another country, and the only people that you have with you is your team. So I don't know who wants to take a stab at that one.
Sonia, do you want to try first, and then I can jump in?
Yeah, it's tricky because I think the person is not in a place where they feel confirmed and validated and supported. So that's a big stressor, to be in another country away from who you are most feel safe with. And then on top of that, I think then the question that was of being in another country and being asked, are you Canadian? Are you one of us? Or are you one of them? It really pulls on the parts of oneself of who am I? And when there's a bit of an identity conflict, and that can be very stressful. And it sounds to me, Captain Janor, you found ways yourself to cope with something that gives you some sense of connection. That's what I would say to it. I guess I'm not as familiar with working with the military community and the unique challenges that they have. Maybe Montero, you could speak more to this.
I honestly think, part of this is you didn't feel like you were part of your team. And people do report this. They feel unsafe with their own teams, with people they train, with people, especially when they're overseas, when they're more vulnerable. And drumming is a great way to get out of your head and get away from everyone. Running is another way. I know people who ran as a way just to deal with the stress and the pressure. I know people who read, who escaped into other worlds. People took pictures, people did all kinds of things. And the one thing that was really hard to do, and I understand why it was hard to do, and I would never encourage anybody to do this, is to tell their team, I don't fit with you guys. I don't feel like I belong. It's not that I don't feel Canadian, is that I don't feel like I belong with you. And that's a hard conversation to have. And I don't think the CAF's there yet where people can sit down and have that conversation.
I agree 100%. And again, I brought that up because we have people that's been deployed. We always have people being deployed, right? And I think it's time that we we can actually step up and say, hey, I am a member of the CAF. I wear the red and white on my sleeve at all times. I am Canadian, right? However, if I'm deployed to a place where, if I'm deployed to, my peers are Jamaican. If I'm deployed to Jamaica, I'm going to be sitting down and having some food with people from the community, right? Because I feel comfortable enough. So I shouldn't have to choose between them or my team, right? Because they're adding that much, as you said, that much stress.
Yes. And I do think one of the things perhaps CAF members also have to have a bigger awareness of is nobody takes a vow forsaking all others when you join the CAF. You can have other communities, you can have other groups, you can form those bonds or make attempts to connect with people wherever you are. It isn't about, well, you just have to be with us and nobody else. There is no such thing, no such vow expected of you.
I'm going to write that one down. Because when I go out, if I'm there and I get an opportunity to get some good curried goat and rice and peas with some or some oxtail and rice, I'm there, right? I don't necessarily need to have a hamburger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That being said, the another question just came across, which I'm not sure if this is one that you can answer, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. Within the Canadian Armed Forces, within the CAF, we we're a disciplined lot of people, right? We get commands every day and we listen to commands. But if we do that on a regular basis, why is it so difficult for when we're given a command to stop racist activities? Why is it so hard?
That's a darn good question. I'm actually going to say, because most people never are going to acknowledge that they're racist, a lot of racism is unconscious. A lot of enacted racism is enacted unconsciously. And I cannot tell you how many times I've had a conversation that has started with, oops, there's an emergency alert. I've had a conversation that has included the statement, I'm not racist, but, and people don't want to admit that their own biases are influencing their behavior. So they're going to be obeying orders or pretending to, but our unconscious biases come out in our behavior often. Sonia, do you want to add on?
Yeah, I want to add to that. I completely agree with you, and I just want to build on that because, indeed, when we talk about racism, a lot of people who struggle with racism, when we talk about racism, some people think, oh, obvious racist remarks, like, hey, making a comment about someone's look, appearance, quite directly and derogatory. However, the most problematic racism and the real problem of racism is the racism that is much more subtle, that is much more covert. And to Dr. Montero's point is that it comes from more unconscious, unquestioned biases. That is the bigger problem of racism. I often talk with people who are dealing with the stress of racism is that, why am I making a big deal about this? It didn't really seem like it was a racist remark or not with me. And I say, that's the issue is if you don't know if you're being harmed, then you can't address it. And that is an issue with the more subtle microaggressions of experience, is that we can't name it and as clearly ourselves, we're not sure. And then the other person's also in denial and not willing to talk about it. So it's very important that whenever someone brings up, suggests that something that was said might have been racist or biased, that each and every one of us, even a person like myself as BIPOC, I have my own biases as well, are very willing to stop, think, and reflect on what those biases are. Because ultimately, the only way we could change something is if we acknowledge it. So, yeah.
And just to build further, there is literature, by the way, on how microaggressions occur. There's lots of literature on it and what they look like and how to build awareness around them and address them.
And you can tell me what you think of this statement. I usually tell people that um, racism doesn't always present itself, right? But whenever anybody is uncomfortable about what somebody within the BIPOC community is doing, then if you have any racist tendency, that's the time it's going to come out, right? If you're driving down the road and somebody cut you off, right? You didn't really care who was driving beside you, left or right, when everything is going okay. But as soon as they cut you off, you're going to be able to tell what they're wearing, what they look like, potentially where they're from, or you're going to come up with your opinion where they're from, and you'll have a few choice words. Am I kind of right there, or am I off? And I'm talking mainly about people being uncomfortable, right? That's when I think it really percolates to the top.
I think when we have emotional arousal, whether it's fear or anger or any of those things, that emotion needs a target. It needs we need to do something, particularly anger, because it actually wants us to do something with the anger. That's why we have anger, so we can act. And we always tend to target those we see as other. It's harder to get mad at people who are like you, unless they're your family. Then of course, you're gonna get mad because they can get under your skin and push your buttons like nobody else. But when it's those kinds of events that are not really personal and the anger needs a target, I think, Kevin, honestly, it's easier to get angry at somebody you truly see as unlike yourself, as so other from you. I don't know, Sonia, do you wanna comment on that?
Yeah, indeed. I want to build on that because when people are angry, so emotions are a way of processing information just like our logic, but emotions move way faster. They come from a part of our mind, the amygdala, that can bypass the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in what we say logical thinking, solving a maths problem, for instance. And it's due to, as Dr. Montero said, it's adaptive. It's good to have feelings and for it to run faster than our thoughts. Sometimes if you are in front of a person has a gun to your head, you need to run or do something. You can't sit there and logically decide, hey, should I stay? Should I run? So it's adaptive. However, when we use our emotions and I bypass our logic, we're more likely to use our unconscious biases to when we make decisions and we speak up and we say something. And indeed, to Dr. Montero's point, is that we tend to maintain unconscious biases that are negative towards people who we are less familiar with, who are different from us, and we have less dialogue with and share each other's perspectives. So that's where we say that when people say I'm not racist, I'm never mean to say something or do something a certain way, we say that's the problem. You don't mean to be racist, but you can be, and that's what we have to try to use the prefrontal cortex a little bit more and just direct a bit more attention on the inside other parts of our mind to sort of stop before we do anything, think before we do.
When my daughter was born, I wanted her to talk. So I said, if you think it, say it. But then once she started talking quite a bit, I said, if you think it, analyze it, and then decide if you should say it, right? So it's a bit of a process that she had to learn. So it's not everything that you're going to say, because potentially you can hurt people, right? So just be aware of that. Dr. Montero, you spoke about the family for a bit there, and I love my family. I do what I do to keep them safe. I do what I do to give them a good quality of life. But when I experience racism, I go home to my family. How does that impact the family?
It depends on where you see the racism coming from. So if you
at work.
Okay, so if you can see the racism as being part of work and being part of the work context, and you can leave it there, and you can say, that's because this is a racist workplace, and I'm going to go home and cry about it with my wife, or talk about it with my wife and deal with it. And how do we teach our children about it, and how do we protect them? That's one thing. What a lot of people do is they internalize it. They get angry, they bottle it up, and then they go home and kick the dog. Um, or they blame themselves, or they get depressed, or they drink, or they do all those kinds of things, and they end up hurting their families, the people who love them the most.
Mm.
The other thing people do is, of course, go home and try to protect their children and their wife from anything and everything harmful, rather than having the dialogue of, this is the world. I have children of my own. We talk about the fact that there is systemic racism, and our job is to see it, and our job is to recognize it, and our job is to advocate. And our job is to protect ourselves as well, and to balance all those things, but not to pretend, and not to wrap ourselves in cotton wool, and not to stop being part of the world.
I'd love to jump in and add a bit to that. Indeed, and the internalizing is a big problem. When you have an emotion, when you feel something, if you don't share it in a healthy way, it doesn't disappear. It actually comes out elsewhere. Slamming the door, being angry and irritable with your family, kicking the dog. And that's why talking about and sharing it is important. And also role modeling within your family, how to deal with it, because other people in your family will also be experiencing and dealing with in other contexts. And for you to role model how to deal with it, and to one of the huge pieces to acknowledge that it does exist, and it's unfortunate, but it's going to be a continued work of progress of change.
You use that B word, Dr. Matero. You said balance.
Mm-hmm.
We're living in a world right now where you're married to a BlackBerry. Children and youth and everybody, they've got their electronic gadgets that they're hanging on to. But you're saying that we should exercise balance, and then we look at discrimination, we look at racism. There is no balance there. So if we're not seeing that balance, how can we create a balanced environment within our safe space at home?
I think it's looking at your wife and children and having the conversation. That's the hardest thing in the world for people to do, is to sit and say, I need to talk, and here's what I'm feeling, and here's what I'm thinking. And let me tell you, my kids roll their eyes every time I say I need to talk, and I need to address what is going on in this family, and here's what we're struggling with right now, and so on and so forth. And you're right, racism is not balance. Racism is a world out of balance. Um, the thing is, we can't change the whole world. I always tell people, when we're working through racist trauma or trauma related to racism, that part of my commitment to you is I'm going to try and contribute to changing the system. And part of your healing is that you're going to change a little piece of your world. You have to take your power back. If we just throw our hands up in the air and say, well, it's an unbalanced world and it's an unfair world, and that's it, I'm done. Well, then what's the point? Like, what's the point? Then let's bury ourselves in our blackberries. But Kevin, you have children, I have children. A lot of people here either have children, or at least are going to get old in this world. And I'm sure they want to get old or have children, or are going to have children in a world that is more balanced. So if not for yourself now, perhaps for yourself later, and for the children you have or will have in this world, we have to make that effort to find our own balance at home, sometimes with help, with people like myself and Dr. Ahmed, but to find a way to find that balance, particularly in ourselves.
It's coming back to feelings.
Yep.
Right. And this might be a time to kind of throw it out. When I was growing up, as I said, I've been in the CAF for more than 3 decades, so I'm up there. Men don't feel. So if I'm not allowed to feel, then how am I going to be able to share any sort of feelings? Help me, help me.
Sonia, do you want to jump in or do you want me to?
Sure. Louis, you know, as psychologists, we love talking about feelings, but I gotta tell you, we don't try to just drag it out of you right away. We know that if you don't know how to work with your feelings, and most people come to treatment, and most people don't really know how to work with their feelings, we gotta go step by step and go gradually and to teach you how to work with your feelings. See, look, society often tells us be rational, as if being emotional is a negative. And what we do as psychologists teach people that you need both your logical mind and your emotion mind and step by step helping you take experiences and label feelings. We explore with you, is it this word, is it that word, until you yourself find, yeah, that's it. It's one of those experiences where you say, wow, like I learned something that helped me feel a little bit better. Often people are afraid of their feelings because they think it's just going to get worse, and it's not. If they feel sad, they're just going to continue to feel sad. If you feel angry, they're going to explode. And we say that's not true. Actually, there's many ways of expressing your emotions, and that's what we do. We teach you the ways that are adaptive and the ways that are not so adaptive. And when you can actually learn to express your feelings in more adaptive ways, you feel good, and then you actually role model for the people around you as well how to constructively express your feelings too.
I'll jump in and say, when male patients have said to me they don't have feelings, and I ask what planet they've come from, because feelings developed in humans as part of our evolutionary survival. So unless they're telling me they're aliens from outer space, they have feelings. They just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to feel them. And I think I will quote a patient because last week, this happened last week, where he said, damn it, Dr. Montero, I'm feeling again. And I absolutely hate it. And I was like, yep. And we went through it. And at the end, he's like, I feel better. I feel better. The feeling changed. So as Dr. Emmett pointed out, I mean, there are ways to express it, to process it, especially anger, especially fear and hurt with racism, and guilt and shame, because those are very much part of racism and the experience with racism. Um, Once you deal with them, once you feel them, once you allow yourself to process them, they don't overwhelm you anymore. That's all we're doing. We're just helping make sure they don't get so stuck they stop you from living your life.
I just want to add one more thing. It just reminded me when you were speaking is one common issue people often are concerned with is how do emotions help? I just think they make it worse. And or how what's the point of the feeling? I get it. I have a right to feel sad, upset, angry, but I can't change what's outside of me. So what's the point? And I say that when you deal with your emotions, to Dr. Montero's point, when you process it, you at least when you acknowledge it for yourself and you share it to yourself or to another person, such as a therapist, and have it witnessed, you feel your own quality of life, your mood is much better, and you do end up having you're less reactive to people who upset you. I find a lot of people say, wow, like I can just tolerate a lot more. Even if I disagree, I can tolerate a lot more. And it opens up a mental space to be able to engage in activities more constructively, make decisions much better. When you, otherwise, as we say, your emotions don't disappear. They don't go away if you don't feel them. They don't go hiding. They're there. They're just somewhere where you don't notice them, and they're actually causing you more harm unless you sort of take them out and try to unknot them a little bit and understand them better.
Um, I'm very, very conscious of the time that we've spent. Um, and I do want everyone that's listening or having the dialogue with us to be able to walk away with resources, right? So we've had a great dialogue, but what's next? What's out there that that's available to the BIPOC community that can help us to move from the hurt, or to identify what's going on, or to address the chain of command or whatever. What can you help me with some help us with some resources that might be available, both within the CAF and outside the CAF?
Do you want to start, Dr. Matera? Like you probably know more about this
Do
than
you want to go first, just about the external resources, and I can talk a little
external
bit.
resources. Well, I'm happy to share. I know in more this year in particular, there have been more and more websites and organizations that have come up that provide a directory of for BIPOC members of either mental health professionals or other resources within the BIPOC community that people can access, even in groups, discussion groups. I don't have them offhand, but I'm happy to kind of collect. A couple of them have been sent to me. I've been wanting to put them together as a list, so happy to share that. Obviously, again, there are a lot of clinics and a lot of mental health services. One thing I do know, this time of year, if people are looking for something outside of CAF, I would know this time of year up until December, things get really booked up. So please don't be discouraged if you contact someone thinking this is a great fit. We have on our own like clinic have a wait list, but come January, things get a little easier. Because of COVID, it's understandable, like there's more demand for resources as well. But happy to share what I have. Maybe email those lists to yourself.
And maybe that's an idea. Maybe we put something together, and Sonia, maybe I can reach out to you and get some of your ideas and put what we have together and have that available for those who want it.
Yeah.
So that, you know, people can use what they feel is appropriate for them.
Okay, that'd be great. So within the CAF, I know that you know, the CF Health Services has got a lot of resources that's there. You know, if you could talk about them, and in that, like, when should we reach out for help? If you can talk about that as a part of your resources.
Sure. I can just say, I mean, we will put that in the resources I put together with Dr. Emma's help. But I think reach out, like I said, when you stop doing things, okay? When you stop doing things you love, when you start to feel like you're not sleeping well, when you're tired, overly tired for no reason, when you feel angry all the time, you know how you normally feel and you know when things are really wrong, right? Don't wait too long. Yes, it's COVID. We are still working. We have social work there. We have psychology. We have psychiatry at the Denison Armory, and we are available to talk. We also have our primary care clinicians who are available as well. So, and you can always go through them and come to us. And social work does see walk-ins as well still. So just call up. They do it mostly over the phone, but they are taking calls. And, you know, to get to somebody like me or our psychiatrist, you do have to go through your medical officer.
Yeah, just to add to that, definitely when something is off, and that can look very different for everyone, whether just like Dr. Montero said, oh, I'm not enjoying the stuff that I usually used to, I'm not going out, I'm feeling irritable, or just generally you have a sense inside that something is not right and it's lingering day by day. It's not just one day and then you feel great the other day. It's just a pattern. Don't hesitate to reach out for help. Often when you first start working with someone, the first appointment's all about like, what are my goals? I don't really know what it is, but that's an opportunity to sort of figure that out. And many people seek out help. It's a really good investment in yourself. I myself do personal therapy as well. I find it's like having a personal trainer to improve my mental well-being. It's like, you know, a personal trainer helps you with your physical well-being as well. And so I highly recommend that. It's been a great experience for me.
Wow. You know, if I wasn't a believer before, you both made me a believer.
Hey.
This is wonderful. Now, if you know, they talk about the elevator speech. You got 30 seconds as you're riding up in the elevator. I'm going to be very generous, and I'm not just going to give you 30 seconds. But if I was to give you about a minute or minute and a half to say something, to give everybody listening a takeaway, right? What would be that nugget? What would be that diamond that you'd like to share with the with those who are listening to you?
I find that from all the experiences I've been through myself and the experiences that I hear of people sharing their struggles with me, the most important thing is finding a voice and giving voice to experiences. And because when you find your own voice and you share your voice, just like I did today, I strongly believe that you can help other people find their voice as well. You can empower them to say, hey, if he or she can do it, I can do it too. So I always encourage you, and whatever experiences you have, even if you think I can't change it, and right now I can't change the person in front of me, know that when you do speak up with someone and somewhere, it does make a difference.
And I would say to people, you're not alone. Other people are suffering just like you. Other people have suffered just like you. I heard a story about a veteran who talked about 21 years of racism in the CAF, and still feeling it. You're not alone. But you can make a difference. You can make a difference by making a difference for yourself, by helping yourself first, by giving voice. And it may not be coming to mental health, it may be talking to a friend, it may be reaching out to somebody, an ally you trust. But the minute you start talking, giving yourself a voice, as Dr. Emmett said, the minute you start making this real, the minute you start saying, we need to find a way to change this, because living with this toxin is not okay. Living with racism is not okay, and it's especially not okay in the Canadian Armed Forces. Then you won't be alone. And the rest of those people who are struggling and suffering in silence won't be alone anymore either. So please speak up.
Wow, very powerful. Um, my takeaway is find my voice. Well, I always had my voice, so um, it's got me in a little bit of a trouble throughout my career, but thank God I didn't lose it. Um, but I like the piece about investment, right? People are always investing stocks and bonds and whatnot, but we've got to invest in ourselves, invest in not just going to the gym and working out, but invest in our mental health, and that's a part of having our voice. Um, so, you know, on behalf of the health services team, I want to take the opportunity to first thank all the participants who took their time to sit and listen to us have this dialogue, and for all of you to be engaged by sending questions so that we can present them to our distinguished panel. To both of you, you know what? If I have challenges, you're going to hear from me, because you have really brought me on side. You have um, really expressed what it is to be living as a BIPOC and the challenges that we have as patients and as professionals. So, on behalf of everyone, I want to really thank you for taking your time. And if I was commanding the parade right now, as you know, in the military, we like to have a parade. We would have a guard with 100 people that is standing there, and they would be at the shoulder arms with their weapons. And I'd give the word of command, general salute, to the panel salute. You've been very distinguished. You've passed on great knowledge. And I look forward to sitting down and doing this again. And yes, I said doing it again. I'm going to challenge the 32 CF Health Services to do this again. And if it's while I'm in Jordan, I hope that I'll be asked to moderate again. And if I'm back in Canada, I'm going to be in your face and said, you better bring me on because I want to do this again. So again, thank you all very much. And to the team, it's only lunchtime, so I hope that you had a healthy lunch. And if you didn't, make sure you have your veggies. Was that a good one there? So again, to both of you doctors, thank you so much. And I look forward to doing this again. So without any further ado, I would really like. If anyone that has participated, please, I think there was an email address that was there. Please feel free to drop us a line. If not one that's there, Dr. Matera or the health services, just contact them and they will support you 110%. So again, thank you again. Have a great day and God bless you all. Signing off from Jordan.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.